For this podcast, we're going to be talking about Fatal Affair, the new movie from Netflix. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. The link's going to be in the description box below, and make sure to become a Patreon. It starts at $5 a month, and you get exclusive content up to 24 to 48 hours before anyone else does, and also exclusive videos. So, yeah, let's begin with Fatal Affair. There's a lot to say for this movie, but there's a lot not to be said also. And so basically, how we're gonna do this is I'm just gonna go scene by scene, and but let me give you an overall synopsis of the movie. So the whole premise is basically Nia Long's character. She plays Ellie. Make sure I'm correct. Yes, she plays Ellie, and she's married to Marcus. And so they have like a dead marriage essentially. And so this character played by Omar Epps, David, comes in, and they begin an affair. Now I'm putting an affair in quotation marks, and I'm gonna get to why that's in quotation marks affair um pretty soon in the video because it's really not an affair. If you've seen the movie, you know that. And so there's other characters in the movies. Courtney, there's an assistant, there's a daughter, but mainly it's the core three: it's Ellie, David, and Marcus. And so the movie begins with a white, a white man and this. I'm like, okay, there's a white man and this woman. They are essentially in a relationship, and he gets killed, and she gets killed also. But that's the first flaw. The scene. So, so the woman, the black woman who we discover is David's wife later in the movie. She goes to get a drink of water, and the white guy is essentially murdered. It takes maybe 30 seconds to get a drink of water, so he's murdered, dragged upstairs, put in the bathtub in 30 seconds. I mean, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, so we're introduced to Ellie. She's a real estate agent. No, okay, she's an attorney because the first scene, her job is a bit confusing because she pulls up to a house and I'm thinking, is she a real estate agent? But it turns out she's just an attorney. And so she she's coming to a house to look at a house that her family's moving into, and we're introduced to her husband, and you can tell right away that they're not really clicking in their marriage. And so anyway, she goes to you see the next scene, she's at work, she meets David, the character, and we find out they went to college together. So that, I mean, there's nothing odd about that. I just have to make a comment. Omar Epps and that one hearing and that one hair was very off-putting the entire movie. I think that the movie was a miscast. With casting Omar Epps because he didn't give off the right, what do I want to say, the right tension that's needed to be like, didn't seem didn't have chemistry basically. Ellie and David, Nia Long and Omar Epps did not have romantic chemistry for this movie that was needed for us to believe that these two people have so much tension that they would consider it an affair. They just gave off best friend energy, and so that was the main gripe, the miscast between Omar Epps and Nia Long. So I wish they had casted somebody with a somebody. I wish maybe they um switched the males, so like have Omar have played the husband and have the husband character have played the stalker, quote unquote. So anyway, um Ellie was meant to go to a club with her friend Courtney, and so would you guess it? Courtney cancels for whatever reason, but David shows up and they have a drink. And so they're talking, and She's revealing all this stuff about her marriage to a stranger. Okay, not really a stranger. She knew him from college, but still, he's essentially a stranger. And she's just telling him all the details about her marriage. And so she shows him pictures of her daughter, and that's pretty normal. And they're just talking. And so and so they start dancing, slow dancing. And there's a scene in the bathroom where they're like, wait, okay, this the scene in the bathroom is a affair. This is where I put the quotes in. This was the most awkward, I'm gonna say it again. This was the most awkward, stale, lifeless. This was like white Wonder Bread. It had no life, it had no bite. It was just that. It was just a scene that had no life. So basically, they kiss in the bathroom. Nothing more, nothing less. They just kiss, and she's like, she pushes them off, and she's like, "No, I can't do this." But it's like, girl, what? You can't do what? This is so stale, so boring. And like from this one boring makeout session with no chemistry that was bland, he becomes enthralled with her. Oh, I like that word. Enthralled. I feel like I'm not saying it right, but I like that word. So he becomes basically obsessed with her. And she walks out of the bathroom. He's like, my car is here. But girl, how did you have time to call the Uber? Your car came in like you literally walked out of the bathroom and like, yeah, my Uber's here. That's the Uber in this movie, in this world, is very fast. Shout out to that. Anyway, she goes home. She's like, okay, before she goes home, let me get this. She's in the back seat of the Uber, fantasizing about David. Okay, the reason this is a problem for me, the fact that she's in the backseat fantasizing about the kiss in the bathroom that was stale with David, is that after the scene, we're expected to believe that she's like not into this man at all. She's just completely thrown off by him. But she's also in the backseat fantasizing about him. So I guess we're supposed to think that her marriage is so dead, but then we don't really just find out why her marriage has become like this. It's just like, it's just dead. And so after this, her and her husband suddenly, magically, are doing okay. We see them like dancing on like the waterfront. They're coming back together. I guess we're to assume that the kiss with David reignited the fire in her and her husband. Um, I'm not gonna ask why. We have a scene of them in the shower together. Her, Ellie, and her husband, Marcus. So, and they have more chemistry than she had with David. This is why I think that the the actor who played Marcus should have played David because he and Nia Long had a lot of chemistry. Meanwhile, Omar Epps and Nia Long had best friend energy, and I feel like that best friend energy would have worked if he played the husband, and to show that the romance had died. I felt like they should have switched places. Anyway, we find out that David is in therapy because he's nuts. Shocker? No. So later, we meet the daughter. I don't know her name. I'm just gonna call her the miscast daughter. Yeah, she's miscast because come on, like I'm I'm not gonna go into the whole colorism issue, but Netflix has a Netflix has a history of casting to play younger characters, to play like people under 30. They have a they have a tendency to cast biracial girls to play teens, college age, and students. And so this the actor, she looks like a Meghan Markle. She reminds me a bit of Meghan Markle, and she's the she's the daughter of Lee Long and her black husband Marcus. Okay, yeah, I believe that. Anyway, let's suspend disbelief, right? I'm like, Is this a Kenya Barris production? Okay, let me stop with that. Kenya Barris would have better writing. Okay, so we see that I'm gonna have to go. We see that David is texting Ellie and basically like, why aren't you talking to me, blah blah blah, like I thought we had something, blah blah blah. And then we see that like he's stalking her because we see a scene where he's in a bedroom with her husband and David is outside watching and taking pictures, which was like, okay, typical stalker movie. The guy's outside watching because yeah, people just leave their windows open at night. Just like, yeah, just that makes sense. And a black family does that, especially black people love to be watched. Okay. Anyway, the daughter is home for winter break. No, for fall break. That's what she said. But if I remember correctly from college, fall break is usually like you get the Thursday and the Friday off, and so it's like a 4 day weekend, quote unquote, or maybe a 5 day weekend if you're lucky. But this girl was home for about 2 months. That's a hell of a fall break. That's an entire fall semester. Okay, that makes sense. Anyway, we see that her coworker and best friend, Ellie's best friend and coworker, Courtney, comes to dinner and she brings, guess who? David, yes, the stalker guy. And they're dating now. Yeah, because best friends typically start dating old college friends of their best friend without telling them. So I don't know. So anyway, we see later that Courtney is not a good friend, so it's no surprise that she wouldn't say nothing about bringing David to dinner, even though she doesn't know that he's a stalker. It's still odd. And in the dinner scene, this bugged me. Nia Long is Nate tears the entire scene. She looks like she just heard somebody died, and everyone is just smiling, even her husband Marcus. That's how you know there's a disconnect. She looks like she's about to break down, and everyone else is just like happy and talking about, oh, Courtney and David's connection and whatever. And she's just like, she's staring into space, tears in her eyes. But no one is like, "Hey, Ellie, what's wrong?" That like, I get movies try to push the fact that the character is distraught and uncomfortable with this person being there, but it's not realistic that somebody would be sitting at a dinner looking distraught and on the brink of a breakdown and no one would notice, especially a dinner with someone's best friend or husband, and they would have noticed that their person was being affected. I just don't buy it, so whatever. Anyway, they go in, Ellie and David, they have it out, while the best friend and her husband are outside, and she tells him to leave. And so he goes outside, and awkwardly he's like, I have to go. Because, yeah, that's not suspicious after you just went in to the house with Ellie, then you suddenly have to go. That makes a lot of sense. Anyway, Ellie meets up with David. Yes, she meets up with a guy who's been stalking her to tell him to stop stalking her. So you meet up with your stalker to tell your stalker to stop stalking you. Anyway, they meet up at dinner, and she comes in incognito with sunglasses because yeah, Ellie, everyone in this restaurant knows who you are. They know that's Nia Long. No, they don't. Okay, anyway, she goes with sunglasses because she can't be seen, whatever. And so the next major scene, we get that Courtney, who's Ellie's best friend, comes in and is like, "Why have you been trying to seduce my man, David?" Because David had told her that Ellie had been pursuing him, sent him text messages. So basically, the messages David was sending Ellie, he had switched it around and said that Ellie was sending that to him, and saying that she tried to seduce him in the bathroom with that affair kiss that they had, quote unquote. And then he also mentioned that she had lured him to the restaurant, and and he basically switched it around on her, like made everything he was doing, said that she was doing to him, to Courtney, who was Ellie's best friend. And what does Courtney do about that information? So Courtney gets that information, and she doesn't like a good best friend. She doesn't say, "Hmm, okay, I hear you, David. You're a new guy, but I know my best friend. Maybe I should go ask her calmly and say, hey, David said this about you,' or tell her, or be like, I don't believe you, David, right?" But no, she goes and she accuses her best friend. She's like, why would you do something like that to me? Like, you're an awful person. She basically just like demonizes her and calls her everything but the name of God and just basically bashes her and believes this David guy, even though she's trying to tell her, like, what he said is not true. Anyway, we have a scene where David breaks in to Ellie's house and steals her lingerie. Now, you gotta remember that part. Steals her lingerie. That's gonna come back in the movie. And the daughter almost catches him. That scene is highly flawed. But then we have a scene with them having dinner. Ellie, Marcus, the daughter, the Mescal's daughter. I don't know her name. I didn't learn it. I don't plan to learn it. And they're having dinner, and she looks distraught again, but no one questions why she's just sitting there distraught all the time. Anyway, David gives Ellie's lingerie to Courtney to wear, and she doesn't question why her man bought her lingerie with no tags on it. Yeah, that makes sense. Whew. Anyway, let's keep going. Ellie's investigating David. She's following him around. She discovers that he probably killed his ex-wife. His ex-wife was the black woman in the start of the movie with the that was dating the white man. The white man was her boyfriend, so he murdered them both. And I don't even think she was his ex-wife. They were getting a divorce. Anyway, we find out that David and Marcus, who's Ellie's husband, are golf buddies. They're friends. And so they're at the golf club, and Marcus tells him about an injury he had a couple months ago where he was run over by a truck, and he like broke or fractured his shoulder. Now, when I heard this, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, of course. David was the one who ran him over with the truck, so David must have been plotting this the entire time. Now, I'm gonna keep that in mind, that the idea that David was probably plotting this whole he was in love with Ellie's scheme to stalk her and get her for months and months of time. So anyway, they're at the golf club, Marcus and David, and David says something really really weird. He's talking about like being so in love with a woman that you would kill for her and whatever. Marcus is not suspicious about this really weird dialogue he's spewing. Anyway, Ellie goes to David's house apartment, and she's almost caught. What the scene where she's not caught is so unbelievable. Like you could see her right. Like I'm just gonna ignore that and just move on. Anyway, he's called over to by Courtney to come meet up with her, and so Ellie calls Courtney before David gets there to warn her. It's like David's crazy. He's not the man who you think he is. He got a job at the firm because he's trying to get to me all along. So I guess like from this speech where Ellie is like, he's been trying to get to me all along, we're meant to infer that he's the one who ran the husband over. We're meant to infer that he has been plotting this for a long time. We're meant to infer all of this, that he's caused this break in her marriage that happened in the past. We're meant to infer. They told us, but it didn't show us. Movies need to show, not tell. So they just told us this. Like, we're just meant to infer that this is how it is. And so we're going with that inference. Anyway, Courtney suddenly decides to believe her best friend, or partially believe her best friend, out of nowhere, because because the entirety of the movie, she's been acting like her best friend is a terrible person. She that would cheat on her husband, that would do all of these terrible things, but suddenly she's like, maybe my best friend is not trash after all. Maybe David is crazy. Okay. And so David comes in, and David's like, who are you talking to? And she doesn't play it off well. And so he basically like hits her, and she's like unconscious. And that's the last we hear from Courtney. Yep. We don't see the two best friends reconcile. We don't see them talk. That's just the last we hear from Courtney. That she's hospitalized, whatever. And so I'm fine with that. I didn't really like the character Courtney, the best friend. So I'm fine with her being gone from the movie after this. She doesn't really so, and we're meant to believe that Courtney told the investigators that David is the one who attacked her because a detective comes in and she's like, we're gonna find David, blah blah blah. They don't really show that. They just show the detective telling Ellie that we're gonna find this guy. So we're meant to believe that Courtney had Courtney in her unconscious state had told the detective that David was stalking Ellie, or maybe Ellie got there first and told. Anyway, some way it doesn't make any sense. Some way the detective finds out all the story. She knows everything, and Marcus, Ellie's husband, comes pick Ellie up, and they're just like talking and whatever. And so Ellie tells Marcus the entire story about how David and the quote unquote affair that's still seen. Oh my god. Anyway, and okay, what bugged me about this part was they okay, the two parents now know what's going on, but they don't get their daughter. They don't get the miscast daughter, right? They don't say there's a crazy stalker out there. Maybe our daughter should be informed since she's I don't know, since she lives here, maybe she should be informed. Maybe we should like stick together. Maybe we shouldn't drift far apart, especially with a crazy stalker out there. And so I was confused with the movie. Anyway, the detective comes to speak to them. And so we're meant to believe that David could possibly be dead. Like I don't know where that came from, but it's it's just whatever. We're just meant to believe that. So I'm just gonna go with that because the movie doesn't make any sense. And so we Ellie goes at night to her office and her assistant is dead. Like, okay, they just okay, her assistant is dead. That's the first character in Ellie's circle that has like died. So yay plot. And so David comes to the house, he attacks them, he kills like a police officer. Um, they end up killing them, blah blah blah. Like the whole scene is just typical. And it ends like with the daughter going back to college after her 2 month long fall break. That's a great fall break. I want to know what college that is that gives you 2 months off for fall. Like for Christmas, she must get like 5 months off. And for Thanksgiving, it must be like 3 months off. When is she ever in school? Anyway, she goes back and we see Marcus and Ellie holding on to each other, hugging. So we're meant to believe that their marriage is repaired. Now let's talk about all the wrong with the movie. I basically just gave you the whole scene by scene, and so that's mainly all that was wrong with it. But this movie has been made 1,000 times. The idea of a fatal affair, the idea of obsession, like Beyonce's obsession with Idris Elba, Sanaa Lathan has made movies like this. Every major black actress in Hollywood has made this movie. This movie has been made 1,000,000 times. And so I'm not gonna knock it because make your bag how you will. It is the number one movie on Netflix, so people like to watch it. People like that genre. I like that genre. I like the fiddle affair genre. But I feel like they should have changed it up a bit. They could have like I don't know, killed somebody. Like it just feels like no one was really affected. They killed the personal assistant character, okay, but we saw her for like 2 minutes, and they killed the wife in the beginning and the boyfriend, but we saw them for like 30 seconds. So that wasn't nothing major. They should have pushed more. They should have killed Marcus or killed the miscast daughter to really, I don't know, shake it up a bit. And I get the idea of like he's been stalking them forever, and maybe potentially he's been obsessed with her from college, which wouldn't add up because he got a wife that he killed. Yeah, that doesn't really add up. The movie had plot holes. The script was weak, and as far as the acting. I think that Lee Long knew that she was making a template movie. And by template movie, I mean that, like, when you want to make a presentation and they have templates, or you want to make a resume and they have templates, like, it's been made before, but you're just using it and you just like input your own information, right? It's like you know what I mean? It's a template. So like the movie has been made a million times, but she just inputted her characters in there. So with that template movie, I felt like the actors who were being template actors didn't really push themselves. The acting was average at best. The acting I would give a C minus. The script I would give a D plus, and I would rate the movie a 3 out of 10. I'd say it's a must watch as far as bad movies, but I would not watch it again. And honestly, it's forgettable. I'm gonna forget about it. I even to do this podcast, I had to put the movie on and actually look at it, and I actually had to write the character's name on there because it's just forgettable. The only character name I remembered was David, and I don't even know why that was. But yeah, so I would suggest watching it, but will you like it? Probably not. It starts out with some potential for a movie of its kind, but by the end, it's really it's really not anything great. It's flat. It doesn't really have any high points, but it does have a lot of low points. Some of the best scenes are few and far between. Like, I feel like when we watch a Fatal Attraction type movie, the best scenes are the almost getting caught, right? The best scenes are the scene like, oh my gosh, the scenes that make you say, but those scenes are not even here in this movie because it's not plausible to get caught. It's just like very flat.